One of the most powerful features of any operating system is the command line. This is true in Windows 7 as it was in previous versions of Windows, as well as all other operating systems as well. At the top you'll notice this is cmd.exe. Keep that in mind for now. We'll refer back to that later. The easiest way to start the command line is to do the Windows button and R to bring up the run prompt, and then type in CMD, and that will open up the window that you see before you here. You'll see the default prompt that we have, and we're just going to walk through a number of utilities that are useful for troubleshooting as well as configuring security and sometimes getting around security a little bit. Let's start with the basic one, which is just IPconfig. And what IPconfig will do is show us the configuration information for the network cards that it finds. In this case, you see we have an IPv4 address of 192.168.1.102, so we're on a private network. Our default gateway is 192.168.1.1, which is actually the wireless router, and then there is a gateway beyond that one. But this one goes to the wireless router and then moves on to further from there. If we type in IPconfig /all, it will show us all information that it finds, and this will be a plethora of information, including IPv4 and IPv6 information, MAC addresses, and just about everything else you could possibly hope for. To clear the information, should we need to do so, we can do IPconfig /release, and that will restore the IP address back into the pool to be issued to someone else. You can see we have now no connection information. To get information back, we just simply change it to renew, and we're back in business. It will find another address to use. If the same one we had was available, it will use it again. In this case, you can see 102 was available, and so it's back in business with us here again. Similarly related to IPconfig is the Netstat command. What Netstat will do is it will show us the ports that are listening. In this case, you see that we have TCP ports available. 127.0.0.1 is, of course, the loopback address for this particular machine. This machine is known in this case as EA Delaney-PC7, and to the right of the colon under the local addresses, those are the ports that are open. So 4000, 49174, 50042, and we're scrolling on down as it's trying to find those. The state of each of those ports is listed to the right, so we have a couple of them are established, we have a couple of them that are waiting, and so on. If we want to take a look at all ports, then we will just change it to netstat -a, just as we did with the IPconfig. And in this case, you'll see there are a few other ports that are out there that are listening or in some other state besides the ones that were listed previously. Additional information, additional hosts that we're listening to are solid, and the router there, the 192.168.1.1, as well as a machine named Kristen's is listening there as well. A couple UDP ports down towards the bottom, and that gives us a complete list of the ports that it sees at this time. Let's change the netstat command to netstat -e, and that will give us our Ethernet statistics. So you can see the Ethernet statistics since the machine has been booted last time. We're looking fairly good. We have no unknown protocols, no errors. We're looking good there. If we change it to netstat -r, it will show us the routing table. This is the exact same information that we would get if we typed in route print. So this is an easy way to get that information. Notice towards the bottom we have no persistent routes either with IPv6 or IPv4 route tables information there. So there's nothing that's a persistent route there, meaning that it will survive each and every time. So that walks us through those. If we want to test the connectivity of how we're getting to somewhere, we can use the ping command. So ping, we can always test our internal configuration by doing 001, and it will just simply do a loop back and make sure everything is working okay with TCP/IP there. We could, of course, substitute out the name of the machine in that case as well, EA Delaney-PC7, and we get the same information. If, by the way, we did not know the name of this particular machine, host name is always the easy way to get that information without having to do anything else. Let's go back to ping again. And in this case, let's ping the gateway, what we know to be the gateway, 192.168.0.1. That is the default gateway taking us outside into the rest of the world. And that's going through what was configured on this machine as the default gateway of 192.168.1.1. Okay, keep that in mind. Let's look for something completely outside of this environment. Let's go to 209, 237, 150, 20, and make sure we can reach that particular host. So we're now going through the router, going through the gateway, going across the internet, so on and so forth. To find out how we actually are reaching those locations, we will substitute in place of ping, we'll use the trace route command. And if we do trace route for the last number we looked at, which was the 209, 237, 150, 20, what we'll find is that the first thing that we are doing is going to the router. This is our wireless router. Moving from the wireless router, then getting to the default gateway. After the default gateway, then we're moving out into the ISP provider. And so now you're going to see we're moving in this particular instance from Anderson to Noblesville to Indianapolis. After Indianapolis, we get to Chicago. Move through Chicago. We've got to get to where the site's actually hosted, which is in Atlanta. So we're finally getting to Atlanta. And you'll see as we're going along here the number of milliseconds it's taking for each of these things to occur. The site in question is actually hosted by Interland, so we're finally getting to their servers, and that takes us to the location where we want to be. So the trace is complete at that point in time. That's how we are reaching that destination. Alright, a couple other command line utilities to work through. Who am I? Will be very similar to what we had with the host. In this case, it's telling us that we are EA Delaney PC7. That's our host name, and we're known on this particular machine as EA Delaney. If we use the same who am I command and use the user option, we see something very interesting here. This shows us the SID number, the security identifier. This is that unique identifier that's there. The host name can change all the time, the username can change all the time, but the SID is a unique identifier for that particular user that does not change. It's the only value associated with them which does not change. Imagine if I walked up to a machine and that machine was unattended and I sat down at that machine and typed in this command, the information that I now have at my disposal. So that's why it's very important to lock the machine when you're away from the workstation and make sure that somebody gives a password to be able to unlock it. Let's do a couple of others. Let's look at the net user command. The net user command by itself will just simply show me a list of all of the accounts that are available on this machine. So completed successfully here. I want to change the password, we'll say, for Kristen K.A. Delaney. So if I do net user K.A. Delaney and give an asterisk, it will ask me to type in the new value for the password. Now don't be surprised, we're going to get an error here in a moment, but I'm going to give a new password value, and I'll give the same thing again, and it will tell me that a system error 5 has occurred. Access is denied. Now this is very important. Even though you have the ability to run many of the commands themselves will not run with less than administrator privileges. You have to be administrator to do that. So what I have beneath here is I have another command prompt, and you'll notice that at the top it doesn't have the same information as the other one did. This one says it's administrator CMD, and you'll notice that my prompt is now into Windows System 32. Let's give the exact same command that I did a moment ago. Let's say net user K.A. Delaney. Let's type in a new password for her, not telling her what it is, so that she'll be frustrated when she walks in the morning, and it tells us that the command completed successfully. You can do anything as administrator, and if you open up the command prompt with administrator privileges, you have to be very careful because of that. For example, I can actually use the net user and then give a name and then choose to make it active and no, and turn off the ability for that account to be used. So there are all sorts of things that I can do once I have that. Now the problem is the way you become administrator with the command window is not very easy. Most commands inside the command window you can use run as .exe in order to run that command. For example, run as and then winver would allow me to do that. So I would simply say run as administrator winver, and it would run the winver command. Now the hard thing is to actually run the CMD command when you are inside a CMD window. It's very difficult to do, and so I discourage against it. So I encourage you to do is I encourage you to make a shortcut, and the shortcut is to a CMD window. And once you make that shortcut to CMD, just simply right-click, choose Properties, choose the Advanced option, and with the Advanced option, click to run it as administrator. That way you'll always be running that one as administrator, and we'll change the name of it there to be able to let us know that we're always doing so. So in this case we're going to change the name to CMD Administrator, and now that's our shortcut to always doing that. Be very, very careful, obviously, when having this on your machine that somebody else doesn't sit down and open it and begin using it without your knowledge. That's been a very quick overview of the command prompt utilities.